We're going to look at section 5.2, and it is dealing with the perimeter. In this section, we will discuss the perimeter of polygons. A polygon is a closed plane figure with 3 or more sides. Each side of the polygon is a line segment, and 2 sides meet at a vertex. Remember, we talked about a vertex when we were looking at angles. That point where the 2 sides of the angle meet is also called that vertex. While having formulas to find the perimeter of a shape isn't necessary, they can be used to practice substituting values into equations and simplifying. You can confirm that you substituted the correct values into the perimeter formula by finding the sum of all of the side lengths of the figure and then comparing the solutions. So we're going to look at some common shapes and name them and give them a formula for adding all the sides up to find the perimeter. So the perimeter is the distance around the outside of the shape. It's like taking a string and outlining it. So we're all familiar with our first shape. It is a square. And to find the perimeter of the square, notice they're labeling one of the sides of the shape as S, and squares have 4 sides of the exact same length. So to simplify the formula, we can say that the perimeter equals 4 times whatever one of the side lengths is. So P equals 4S. Next, we have a triangle. And notice here they labeled each side of the triangle as different, A, B, and C. And so the perimeter is just adding up those 3 sides. So we have A plus B plus C. And some of the lengths or all of the lengths can be the same size. We have special triangles that have 2 sides the same length or 3 sides the same length. But just as any polygon, we add up all the sides to get that perimeter. Next shape we have is the rectangle. And notice they label L for one of the lengths and W as the other. So L represents the length and W represents the width of the rectangle. And opposite sides are the same length, so the top and the bottom are both L's. And so to show that, we just say it's 2 times L. And then we're adding the left and the right side together, which are called widths, W, so we have 2 times W. So P equals 2L plus 2W for a rectangle. And again, key thing is remembering that in perimeter, it's a distance around and you're adding up all the sides. The next shape, it looks almost like a triangle that has its top chopped off. And this is called a trapezoid. And the trapezoid, notice again, they give us A, B, C, and D as lengths. A and C in this case look to be the same length, but it doesn't always have to be. And so again, we'll just add up all the sides together. So we'll just say A plus B plus C plus D. And same thing here with a parallelogram. I'm not sure why they didn't give you opposite sides the same, because in a parallelogram, that is the case, that the opposite sides, in this case A and C, would be the same length, and B and D. They labeled them A and B and C and D, maybe so you're not using the rectangle formula, but it could have been done. But let's just say that our parallelogram and copy the same formula as a trapezoid since it uses the same letters there. So we have A plus B plus C plus D. Look at the completed table from problem 1 and answer the following questions. Are any of the formulas the same? If so, for which shape? Well, we just talked about the two that have the same, A plus B plus C plus D. And so that's yes. And it is a trapezoid and a parallelogram. And for B, why do you think the shapes from part A have the same perimeter formula? Well, they both have 4 sides. And we could have used A, B, C, and D for the rectangle or the square as well. They have 4 sides, but they gave us special formulas for those. And instead of using the formula, what do you need to remember? I mentioned it a couple times. That's for perimeter, it's the distance around the outside of a polygon. And you need to add the sides together. So again, the key thing here is that remember perimeter means to add. When using a formula to solve a problem, it is important to recognize what the variables in the formula represent. Some are easy to identify, such as the variable the side length of a square, which is referred to as S. Other formulas are flexible, which a letter can be used for the variables. For example, a formula involving the side lengths of a triangle can be expressed in multiple ways. For each description, determine which formula from the table should be used to find the perimeter and which measurement would be substituted for each variable in the formula. Then find the perimeter. So for the first one, we have a square has a side length of 5 inches. And so our formula would be perimeter equals 4 times S, since it tells us that it's a square. And in this case, we have our S value equaling the side length, which they gave us as 5. And then our perimeter, we will substitute. And we have 4S, which means 4 times S. So now we're substituting 4 times 5. That gives us 20. Remember, in the story problem, this 20 represents a length. So we need to make sure we include the units, which are inches. So our perimeter for this square is 20 inches. A rectangle has a width of 4 inches and a length of 7 inches. So since they tell us that it's a rectangle, excuse me, the perimeter would equal our 2 times the length plus 2 times the width. And it tells us that the width is 4 inches, so the W equals 4. And the length is 7 inches, so L for length equals 7. So substituting into our formula, we have P equals 2 times L, which is now 2 times 7, plus 2 times our width, which is 2 times 4. So if we simplify that, 2 times 7 is 14, and 2 times 4 is 8. So we have 14 plus 8 to give us 22. And again, we need to add our units on. We're still working with inches. Okay. A parallelogram has side lengths of 5 inches and 4 inches. Now in this case, we can vary it up a little bit. Remember the parallelogram, they used A plus B plus C plus D for our formula, but I mentioned that the opposite sides are the same, so our A and our C could be the same values and our B and our D could be the same values, so they could have really used a formula similar to the rectangle, but let's go ahead and put down it in the form that they gave us for our formula. So we have our formula of perimeter equals A plus B plus C plus D. And we have two side lengths, 5 and 4. So let's use our A and C to equal the first number that they gave us, which is 5. And then our B and our D value will be the second number they give us, which is 4. So if we plug those into our formula now, perimeter equals A, 5, plus B, 4, plus C, which is 5 again, plus D, which is another 4. So 5 plus 4 is 9, and then we have that doubled, so that gives us 18. Or 5 plus 4 is 9, 9 plus 5 is 14, and 14 plus 4 is 18. And again, they give us the units of inches for our problem. Now we have a triangle, and it has the sides of 3 inches, 4 inches, and 5 inches. And so if we look at our formula, we have just the sides being mentioned as A, B, and C. So perimeter equals A plus B plus C. And again, we can pick any of the numbers to represent any of the letters. I'm just going to keep it in order. It just makes sense to me to do it that way. So my A, the first length they gave us was 3. And B will equal our second length, which is 4. And our length of C would be 5. But if you wanted to assign A as 5, B is 3, C is 4, anything like that, it doesn't matter. I do want to mention, it's not important to perimeter, but it's kind of interesting fact that a triangle with sides of 3 inches, 4 inches, and 5 inches ends up being a triangle with a right angle. So it would be a right triangle. We'll talk more about right triangles in other lessons, but I just wanted to point that out to you. Now let's get back to what we're supposed to be doing, our perimeter. And we're adding our 3 plus our 4 plus our 5 when we substitute those values into our equation. And 3 plus 4 is 7. 7 plus 5 is 12. And again, we cannot forget to include our units of inches. Okay. And another example, we have a trapezoid. Again, remember the trapezoid almost looks like a triangle that has the top of it cut off. And just like with our parallelogram, the perimeter equation that they give us is just to add up all the sides. So we have A plus B plus C plus D. And again, it doesn't matter really which letters go where, but we're going to stick with the placement of the letters as far as what they label them in our formulas page on that chart that we were filling out. And so it says it has a top length of 5 inches. If we look at that picture, they label D as the top. So we're going to say that our D value equals 5. And then it says the bottom length is 15 inches. According to our diagram, the bottom was labeled B. 8 inches yet. And then the side lengths are 9 and 12. I'll go left and then right. The left letter, left side was A, so A equals 9 inches. And our right-hand side was C equals 12 inches. Again, but it's really not that important because we know we're just adding up all these numbers together. But let's put them in order. Here we have 9 for A plus 15 for B plus 12 for C plus 5 for D. Okay. And so when we add all of these together, we get, well, when I add them, I like to do, if I'm doing it in my head, 9 plus 15 would be 24, and then 12 plus 5 would be 17. So I'm adding 24 plus 17 together, and that gives me 41. 41 inches. Sorry about that. My keypad is touchy and it locked on me for a second there. But again, you can use a calculator to enter all this stuff in to make sure you're getting the right answer. 41 inches is the perimeter of the trapezoid. Now, they're going to have you practice using the shapes here, where they're giving you all the lengths of the sides all the way around. So make sure when you're doing this that you account for every side. The easiest way for me to do that is to pick a starting point. And so, for example, for number 4, I would start with this 4 and then just keep going around the shape until I get back, which again, for 4, there's only 3 numbers, which isn't a big deal. But if you look at the other ones, you can see that there's plenty of numbers to look at. So start someplace that's easy to remember, like at the top for number 5. I keep working your way around when you're adding up all those numbers until you get back to the top so you don't forget one. And please don't forget to put your units on your answers. And so make sure that you have that as well. If you want to pause and try these on your own, again, you can look at the answer key to see if you're right, and then continue on, and we'll look at some of the story problems together. A police officer needs to tape off a crime scene with caution tape. The smallest area he can tape off is outlined by trees and road signs, which he can wrap the tape around. The trees and road signs mark the vertices, remember vertices are corners, of the figure. So what is the perimeter of the crime scene? So again, let's go ahead and plug in our numbers. So you would have A plus B plus C plus D, which in this case, let's start at the top, 180 plus 107 plus 82 plus 78, which equals 447, and that's in feet. I would caution you to actually type, well, not type, you'd be write this out, because if you accidentally hit a keystroke wrong on the calculator when you're answering a quiz or a test and you get the wrong answer, there's no work for me to check, so I can't give you any partial credit. But if you show that you're adding up all the sides and you get a wrong answer, then at least I can give you credit for knowing that you're adding up all the sides and copying all the numbers down. So make sure that you show some work whenever possible in case you make a mistake somehow. For part B, it says the officer needs 6 feet of caution tape in addition to the perimeter to properly tape off the crime scene. So again, that must be the extra tape of wrapping around trees and things like that. So what is the total amount? So we started off with our 447, and we're adding an additional 6 feet. And so the total will be 453 feet of caution tape. that the officer would need to have. Jessica wants to redecorate her living room by updating items she already owns. Jessica wants to add a decorative fringe to a throw rug. The rug is a rectangle with a width of 8 feet, the length of 8 feet, and a width of 5 feet. If Jessica wants to buy 1 foot more than the perimeter of the rug, how many feet of fringe must she buy? So here we're adding extra. So again, maybe to be able to make those corners look pretty. So we're going with our traditional formula and adding a little bit more. So the perimeter formula, as you remember, is 2 times length plus 2 times width. But then we have to add extra. So our perimeter would equal 2 times the length, which the length they give us is 8 feet, plus 2 times the width, which is going to be 5 feet. And so for that, 2 times 8 is 16, and 2 times 5 is 10. So that gives us 26 feet. Plus, it says 1 foot extra to give us a total of 27 feet of the fringe that Jessica needs to buy. Now she's going to outline her mirror with tube lighting. The mirror is in the shape of a rectangular octagon. The side length of one of the sides of the mirror is 5 inches, and how many inches of tube lighting must Jessica buy? Well, on those quick tips on the side, it mentions that the word regular means that all sides are the same, just like a square. And so we have to use the same number for all the sides. And it tells us that the shape is an octagon, and an octagon, like an octopus, has 8 sides. And so for our perimeter, we have 8 sides that are all the same length of 5 inches. So that's going to be 40 inches. Now for our last question for this problem, Jessica wants to put new trim around the window in her living room. She has 2 windows of the same size. The windows measure 4.5 feet tall and 6 feet wide, but she needs an additional 2.5 feet of trim for each corner of the window. How many feet of trim will she need to buy? So one thing that I see here is that additional 25 feet, it says for each corner, so they're wanting us to add that for all 4 corners. But first, let's go ahead and just do our regular perimeter and then add that extra on. So we have a perimeter, and it is a rectangular perimeter. And so we'll have 2 times, let's do the 4.5 first, since they give that to us, plus 2 times the 6 feet. And that will give us 4.5 times 2 would be 9. And 2 times 6 would be 12. 12 plus 9 will give us 21. But then we're adding that extra, and it's 4 corners times 0.25. Each corner will give us, well, if you think quarters, 4 quarters and $1, we're adding 1 more, and so we're getting 22 inches, and that would be in feet, and that's for 1 window. But if we go back to our story problem, hopefully you're like, oh, you're forgetting something. I'm not. I'm just bringing it up at the end. We have 2 windows, and so we have to double our answer. So we have 22 feet times 2 windows to give us 44 feet total of trim that we're going to need for both windows. So notice there's a few things that you have to pick up on this story problem that makes it a little bit more challenging. So reading carefully in a story problem is vital to be able to get the total right answer. And here's our final story problem. An engineer designing a new smartphone decides to add some soft neoprene edging to the phone. The phone itself is 4.5, 2.5 inches wide. So how much neoprene edging is needed to go along the outside edge of each smartphone? We know phones nowadays are in the shape of a rectangle, so we'll use a perimeter formula. Perimeter equals 2 times the length plus 2 times the width. Here we have fractions to deal with. When I'm looking at fractions, I like to use decimals sometimes. And dealing with it just makes it easier to type in the calculator. So if you look at 4.5 inches, 1 divided by 2 for the fraction is 0.5. And so 4.5 equals 4.5. 4 1/2 equals 4.5. Probably sounds like I'm stuttering, but I keep trying to type and it's pausing. So I will start over. My phone is 4.5 inches, and so okay, it's not letting me type the P, so we will just draw P equals, again, twice the length times twice the width, and it doesn't matter which order you do that in. So 2 times 4.5 plus 2 times, and then 2 2/5, the whole number 2. And then if you do 2 divided by 5, 2/5 is the same as 4/10, so it's 0.4 as a decimal. And so if we multiply those together, we get 2 times 4.5, which would be 9. And then 2 times 2.4 would be 4.8. If we add those together, we will get 13.8. And then since the problem was in fraction form, if we want to change our 0.8 into a fraction, it would be 8/10, which simplifies down to 4/5. So it would be 13 4/5. And again, you need units on that, so it would be inches. So we would need almost 14 inches, 13 4/5 inches of neoprene to go around the smartphone. And then they're extending it and telling us that it's 12 cents per inch. So we need to multiply the length of the perimeter with 12 cents to get how much it would cost. And remember, when you're dealing with money, round 2 decimal places, which is 100th spot. And so let's do our 13.8 times 12 cents, 0.12. And we get 1.656. So if we round it 2 decimal places, it's $1.66. Good luck with your homework.